Tier 1. Heroin. Perhaps the most dangerous thing about heroin is that a good number of people who are addicted don't even know they are hooked and in danger. They mostly believe they're living normal lives and that non-users are insane. Heroin is made from partial synthesis of the opium poppy, a flower found in regions like Mexico, Asia, and South America. It starts out as morphine, but after undergoing a chemical process, it becomes the good stuff. Scratch that. I mean, the dangerous, really scary stuff. Heroin has been illegal in the US since 1924. But this has done nothing to stop it from gaining popularity in the black market. It is reported that roughly 1.1 million people in the US use heroin yearly. Many people who use heroin prefer to inject it into their bodies. But some users have been known to snort it or smoke it in a process that's called chasing the dragon. Each method of use has its dangers, but injection poses the greatest risk of overdose and infections from contaminated needles. When injected or smoked, the effects of heroin hit within seconds. Snorting, on the other hand, takes a little longer, say 10 to 15 minutes. The speed and intensity of heroin highs are part of what makes it so dangerously addictive. The good news is that recovering from heroin addiction isn't impossible. Just ask Steven Tyler. Depending on how old you are, he might be your favorite rock star, or your mom's. Tyler and his band Aerosmith were a pretty big deal back in the 70s. They were so big that between 1979 and 1982, Tyler had about 5 million to his name. Or at least he did until he blew it all on heroin. He had somewhere developed a heroin addiction, and at some point, things got so bad that he was spotted roaming the streets of New York looking for dealers. Tyler's destructive behavior, along with other factors, caused his band to fall from grace. But lucky for him, he was able to clean up his act and get back on track. Psilocybin, magic mushrooms. There are over 10,000 kinds of mushrooms in the world. Tiny ones, giant ones, some edible, some deadly, and some with the ability to shift reality and alter your mind. There are about 180 species with mind-altering powers, but we'll get to that in a minute. A mushroom is the main body of a certain type of fungus, typically produced above ground, on soil, or on its food source. Now, let's talk about magic mushrooms, commonly known as psilocybin. These fungi are the ticket to a hallucinogenic roller coaster that alters your senses and flips your perception of reality upside down. With a simple bite, you embark on a journey where time stretches, colors dance, and your thoughts are wandering through a mix of wild experiences. But let's not get too carried away, which would normally be the goal if you're into that type of thing. Magic mushrooms might feel like your VIP pass to another dimension, but they've got a seriously dark twist. Just ask Demarius Blair Davis. In August 2021, Davis took a trip to Miami Beach, but not the touristy kind. After consuming some mushrooms, he walked into a nearby restaurant, spotted a guy having dinner with his family, and out of nowhere decided to open fire on him. When the cops got to him, Davis explained that he did it because, well, he was high on mushrooms, which apparently made him feel empowered. The guy, unfortunately, didn't survive the incident. He died protecting his 1-year-old son. So while the mushrooms are often marketed as the light stuff, you should be careful. For those tempted to pick them in their natural state, although I wouldn't advise that, you should know that these enchanting fungi, found in varieties like golden tops and blue meanies to liberty caps, can be easily mistaken for their poisonous cousins, leading to a trip you definitely don't want to sign up for. Magic mushrooms can be eaten fresh, cooked into delicious treats, brewed into tea, or even popped as capsules. So what happens when you dive into this psychedelic feast? Well, the adventure typically kicks off about 30 minutes after you consume the mushrooms, or even quicker if you ingest it as a tea, say 5 to 10 minutes. One more thing, everyone's experience is different, so maybe take this with a pinch of salt. Dextromethorphan. We will start this one with a little story about a woman we will call Mrs. J. Mrs. J had a rough start in life, and by 14, she was already deep into substance abuse. Alcohol, weeds, opiates, LSD, you name it. Years went by, and things didn't get any better. Then, at 29, she discovered dextromethorphan, commonly known as DXM, and fell in love instantly, because it brought her closer to God. She was high all right, but I doubt DXM was drawing her any closer to Sky Daddy. DXM was cheap, easy to get, so it quickly became Mrs. J's favorite. Soon, she was downing 1080 to 1620 milligrams a day. For context, the recommended maximum daily dose of DXM is 120 milligrams. So when Mrs. J's marriage started falling apart, she cranked up her dose to around 4,000 milligrams daily. So what happens when you consume about 30 times the recommended dose? If you're anything like Mrs. J, you'll end up in a vehicle collision, but make it out unscathed. Unfortunately, not even the accident could stop her. One night, Mrs. J had a vivid dream about her mother attacking her and doing a bunch of scary things that aren't exactly YouTube friendly. The next morning, Mrs. J attacked her mother and tried to stab her. She didn't succeed, but she did land herself in a rehabilitation facility. After 2 weeks out, she was right back to DXM. This time, she broke into a stranger's house and fell asleep. The police found her, and the rest, they say, is history. Dextromethorphan is an over-the-counter cold and cough medication. It's classified as an antitussive, which is just a fancy word for medicine that suppresses coughing. But there's more to it than that. DXM can be a harmless cough suppressant when taken in the right dose. But if you up the dosage just a little bit, you'll find yourself disconnecting from your body and the world around you. Kind of like a rogue astronaut floating off into space. When taken in high doses, DXM takes on a mind of its own, becoming a dissociative. Dissociatives are a type of drug that makes you feel disconnected from your thoughts, body, or surroundings. And that's where things get really interesting. Dissociatives like DXM mess with the way you perceive reality, making you feel detached from your physical self. Suddenly, you're no longer in your living room watching a Netflix special. You're in a reality where time and space bend, and your body becomes something you only faintly remember. When it comes to its effects, DXM's like a secret Santa thing. You can expect anything from euphoria and itchy skin to visual hallucinations and a sense of floating outside your own body. This usually happens within 30 to 60 minutes of ingestion and can last up to 6 hours, depending on how much you've taken. After the high fades, users often report intense headaches, a foggy, clouded feeling in their brain, nausea, vomiting, and the classic post-trip fatigue. That doesn't sound like fun, but it pales in comparison to the long-term effects of DXM use, like severe mental disturbance and dependency. DXM has also been linked to psychosis, liver damage, and schizophrenia. LSD, lysergic acid diethylamide. Picture this. You're sitting in a dimly lit room, a few friends nearby, and the air is filled with anticipation. Suddenly, the walls start to breathe. Colors swirl like paint on a canvas, and your thoughts, once orderly and straight, now dance like Miley Cyrus in that one music video. In addition to all of this, there are vibrant melodies playing in the background. Well, welcome to the unpredictable world of lysergic acid diethylamide, popularly known as LSD, where one trip can turn a normal evening into a strange adventure full of shiny lights and confusing experiences. Originally derived from the ergot fungus that infects rye and other grains, LSD was first accidentally discovered by Swiss chemist Albert Hofmann in the late 1930s. But it wasn't until 1943 that he discovered its psychedelic properties. His skin accidentally absorbed the substance, and things took a rather interesting turn for him on his way home. The rest, they say, is history. Like most ergot alkaloids, LSD affects serotonin receptors, especially the 5-HT2A receptor. This mainly impacts the brain's default mode network, or DMN, which helps maintain our sense of self. To put it simply, LSD can mess with your mood, sensory perception, and cognitive abilities. Since LSD is such a wild card, you never really know how the trip will play out. Sure, your environment and mindset play a huge role, but you could be all set for a fun time and suddenly find yourself wrestling with paranoia instead. The effects of LSD kick in around 30 to 90 minutes after consumption and can last for 8 to 10 hours, although some effects may linger for days. Users often report colorful hallucinations, time distortions, and a sense of merging with their surroundings, kind of like being at the pub and the beach at the same time. But don't get too carried away. Using LSD can lead to mood swings and impulsive behavior. Say you ignore all the red flags and go ahead to try LSD. You're likely to experience fatigue as the effects of the drug begin to wear off. LSD has got quite the reputation. On one hand, there's people like A$AP Rocky and Carrie Fisher, who have nothing but good things to say about their experiences with the drug. But on the other hand, there are people like Samuel DeWeese, a guy who took LSD, broke into his own rented Airbnb, and barged in with a handgun while holding 2 kids. Yeah, things got weird. MDMA. Molly. MDMA, popularly known as Molly, is a lab-made drug that is pretty similar to stimulants like methamphetamine. However, it often gets lumped in with psychedelics because it can slightly alter how you see objects around you. MDMA users often report feeling energetic, happy, and more connected to those around them. However, like any other psychedelic, it can come with some pretty nasty, and in some cases, dangerous side effects. Molly speeds up the release of 3 key neurotransmitters: serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. These chemicals are like messengers that can deeply affect your mood and behavior. To put it simply, serotonin helps control mood and emotions, while dopamine is linked to feelings of pleasure. That does sound promising, but hey, we're talking drugs here, so you should already expect things to get ugly at some point. Here's the twist. The excess release of these neurotransmitters that build up the excitement in the atmosphere can turn dark pretty quickly, leading to anxiety and paranoia. MDMA is usually swallowed, but it can be injected, snorted, or inserted, wait for it, rectally. Molly usually kicks in within 20 minutes to an hour, depending on the method of ingestion, and can last for around 3 to 4 hours. Some users have reported experiencing jaw clenching, increased heart rate, and dangerously high body temperatures, especially if they are active in a hot environment. And that's not all. Users often experience a come down, leading to fatigue, extreme withdrawal symptoms, anxiety, or even depression in the days that follow. There's also the small issue of people attacking their friends while under the influence. No, seriously, that's happened before. A man identified as Dayan Zerkera shot at 2 of his friends while high on Molly. The group had been hanging out in his apartment and they may have gotten high together. However, that part is unclear. What we do know is that as the 2 friends tried to leave, Zerkera fired shots at them. A bullet grazed one of the 2 victims' hands, but other than that, they were okay. Zerkera was arrested and charged. Like many of the drugs in this video, Molly has some pretty devastating long-term effects. It's been associated with serotonin system damage, which will, in turn, affect the user's memory and mood. Plus, you never really know what you're buying down the street alley. Sometimes the pills sold as Molly do not contain pure MDMA, and taking who knows what is just asking for trouble. So yeah, maybe just skip the drugs. Xanax. Ever heard somebody say they're as cool as a cucumber, but you're not really sure if they're just calm or completely checked out? Well, there's actually a pretty good explanation for that. They might be on Xanax, or they could just be a little weird. But since we're talking about drugs, we will stick with the Xanax theory. While Xanax won't make you feel like a piece of furniture, unlike some of the other drugs you're about to hear about, it can make you feel mentally subdued. At first, it offers a feeling of calmness, but overuse can leave you feeling emotionally numb to just about everything around you. Xanax, or alprazolam, is a benzodiazepine, a class of drugs designed to treat anxiety and panic disorders by calming the nervous system. It's highly effective for these purposes, which is exactly why it ends up being abused a lot. Xanax is often prescribed for short-term relief from intense anxiety or panic, and while it's easy to see why that sounds appealing, you really don't want to be popping this pill for recreational purposes. Things might get pretty ugly very quickly. Xanax works by increasing the effects of a neurotransmitter called GABA, which slows down the activity in your brain. Like time is frozen and everything around you stands still. This can make you feel relaxed, drowsy, or even euphoric. However, with its calming effects comes the risk of addiction. One user recounted their experience with Xanax, saying, "I started taking it just to manage my anxiety, but soon I needed it to get through every single day. As your tolerance builds, you may find yourself needing higher doses to feel the same effects, which can quickly lead you down the rocky road to addiction." The withdrawal symptoms from Xanax can be brutal, especially if you've been using it for an extended period. Users often report severe anxiety, tremors, and insomnia when trying to quit. One person described it like this: "The anxiety I felt after stopping was 10 times worse than before I ever started taking it. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and felt like I was losing control. In extreme cases, withdrawal can lead to seizures or even death. If you're somehow already hooked on Xanax and need a way out, you had better get medical attention. But if you're among the lucky ones, you better not try this at home." On its own, the side effects of Xanax might not seem to be all that bad. But when it's mixed with other substances, things can get deadly. Take DJ AM, for example, the MTV show host who, sadly, passed away from a drug overdose in August 2009. Toxicology reports showed that at the time of his death, DJ AM had a dangerous cocktail of drugs in his system ranging from cocaine and Xanax to Benadryl and Vicodin. Tier 2. Nitrous Oxide. Would you ever consider getting high in the delivery room right before your wife is about to give birth? If your answer is no, congratulations. You're nothing like this Reddit user who goes by the username Block of the Year, and that's an achievement in itself. In a viral Reddit post, Block of the Year wrote, "I thought childbirth would be boring until I found out about the unlimited nitrous oxide and strobe lights at night. I love it when me and my wife get to share our hobbies. She gets to have her fun with giving birth, and I'm blasted on laughing gas all night." To prove that he wasn't just making a sick joke, Block of the Year actually posted a picture of himself and his partner in the delivery room. You're probably thinking, what a nutcase. But here's the kicker. He's not alone in the whole getting blasted in the delivery room thing. Another user replied, "Just don't be like me and pass out when the kid pops out. I ended up with 2 medical bills that day." Yeah, okay. Contrary to what these two seem to think, nitrous oxide wasn't made to entertain bored partners during childbirth. It's been around since the 1800s and was first used to help with pain during medical procedures. Today, dentists and doctors still use it. It's great for calming your nerves without knocking you out. Unlike stronger, more potent drugs, nitrous oxide lets you stay awake, so you can talk to your dentist. Or, like Block of the Year, chat with your pregnant wife while feeling super calm and a little detached from everything. It's like you're still there, but nothing really matters. So how does it work? Nitrous oxide slows down your nervous system, making you feel relaxed, a little dizzy, and maybe even excited. It acts as a depressant on the nervous system, slowing down activity and leading to effects like relaxation, mild euphoria, tingling, and detachment. Its floating and heavy sensations have also been known to induce laughter, which is why it's called laughing gas. But remember, while it's safe when doctors administer it, using nitrous oxide for recreational purposes can be dangerous. It can cause low oxygen, nerve damage, and even depression. Cocaine. It wouldn't be a list of dangerous drugs without cocaine now, would it? The Big C doesn't need an introduction. But just in case you live on the good side of town and somehow haven't heard of it, here goes nothing. Cocaine is often marketed as a party drug that gives a quick burst of energy and confidence. But behind that initial rush lies a dangerous, addictive, and deadly path. Cocaine pops up in toxicology reports almost as often as it does in club bathrooms. Late NBA player Len Bias and pro wrestler Bam Bam Bigelow, among many others, lost their lives to drug overdoses. And the culprit? You guessed it, cocaine. Made from the leaves of the coca plant, cocaine is a powerful stimulant that affects dopamine levels, aka the brain's reward system. Once inside the body, cocaine messes with the brain's normal communication processes, particularly by blocking the reabsorption of dopamine, the neurotransmitter responsible for feelings of pleasure. This surge of dopamine makes the brain associate cocaine with an intense reward, which is why users keep going back for more. There are 2 types of cocaine: the powdered form, which is snorted or injected into the body, and the base form, often called crack, which is smoked. Crack gets its name from the crackling sound it makes when heated. The high from cocaine is usually short-lived, and the faster it enters the bloodstream, the quicker the high fades. The high from snorting cocaine may last 15 to 30 minutes, but smoking crack only delivers a 5 to 10 minute high. Repeated use of cocaine can cause long-term changes in the brain, especially in areas that affect pleasures and stress. These changes make users more sensitive to stress and less able to feel joy from normal activities. The result? Many cocaine users find themselves chasing a high that's increasingly difficult to reach, while also feeling more anxious and stressed when not using the drug. Cocaine affects not only the brain, but also many other parts of the body. It can damage the heart, cause strokes, and lead to serious issues like ulcers and weight loss from lack of appetite. On one hand, snorting cocaine can harm the nose, leading to nosebleeds and a permanently runny nose. On the other hand, smoking crack damages the lungs, and injecting it into the body puts users at risk of infections like HIV from sharing needles with others. No matter how you think about it, using cocaine in any form is a loss-loss situation. Rohypnol. The world is a dangerous place, and it's thanks to drugs like Rohypnol, or at least the people who misuse them. Rohypnol, also called roofies, is a trademark for flunitrazepam, a potent member of the benzodiazepine family. Think Valium or Xanax, but much stronger. It was designed as a sedative, and while it's legal in many parts of the world to treat insomnia and for pre-surgery relaxation, it's totally banned in the US because of its dark side. Rohypnol often pops up in conversations about date mistreatment because it has strong sedative effects, which unfortunately make it a go-to drug for some people with bad intentions. It dissolves almost instantly in liquid, leaving no taste or smell behind as a result. It can easily be slipped into someone's drink and they would be none the wiser. Rohypnol also causes partial amnesia, which means victims will have little to no memory of the incident. In the late 1990s, the world saw an alarming number of young girls and women getting roofied, which, if you didn't know, is code for drugged and most likely taken advantage of. One such incident occurred in 1997, when a 20-year-old Woodbridge man was found guilty of giving the illegal drug to an underage girl and carrying on with her. Fast forward about a decade, and criminal minds in Hong Kong had found a new use for the drug. Women in the area would meet up with American businessmen, spike their drinks with Rohypnol, and wait for the effects to kick in. Once the men were knocked out, the women would rob them, and sometimes even put them in compromising positions so they could get blackmail material. In addition to being every pervert's dream come true, Rohypnol is also used for recreational purposes. Shocking, right? I know. Once it's in your system, Rohypnol takes about 15 to 20 minutes to kick in. At first, it feels like you're just getting a little tired, but before you know it, you're completely sedated. The effects peak within an hour, and you're out of commission for about 4 to 6 hours, though the sluggishness can hang around for 12 hours or more. It's like your brain hit pause and forgot to tell you. Imagine being in a super deep sleep, but you're not actually in bed. You're awake, kind of, but nothing around you makes sense. The scariest part? When the drugs wear off, you might not even remember what happened. At high doses, Rohypnol can completely wipe out your ability to function. We're talking about memory blackouts, aggressive behavior, and even hallucinations. One user shared a terrifying story of waking up in a hospital with no memory of how they got there. The withdrawal symptoms can be intense. Think panic attacks, seizures, insomnia, and crippling anxiety. It's like your brain is screaming for the drug, and it doesn't stop until it gets it. Long-term users often struggle to shake the cravings, making it a tough addiction to beat. When next you're headed for that party, you really might want to watch your drink. GHB. The only thing worse than a date assault drug is one that has been associated with a semi-famous serial killer. British serial killer Stephen John Port, who targeted gay and bisexual men in the early 2010s, was known to use GHB as a drug of choice. Port would lure victims to his place, spike their drinks with GHB, and take advantage of them while they were incapacitated. 4 of his victims died from a drug overdose because he slipped them lethal doses of the substance. Alright, let's talk about GHB, also known as gamma-hydroxybutyrate. Yeah, that's a mouthful. Just tell your dealer liquid ecstasy or grievous bodily harm. I'm sure they know what to hook you up with. GHB comes in a colorless, odorless liquid form that has a salty or bitter taste. It might seem harmless at first, but just a tiny bit too much can turn a fun night into something dangerous. Think party drug meets chemical hazard. So how does one take GHB? Well, it's usually swallowed, though some users go for injecting it or even inserting it in ways we won't dive too deep into. Fun fact, back in the 60s, GHB was actually studied for medical use and was even used as a general anesthetic. Fast forward to today, it's illegal in many places, and rightfully so, thanks to its side effects. When it comes to the science behind it, GHB is a depressant that slows down your central nervous system. So while it might make you feel relaxed or euphoric at first, you're really just numbing your brain and body. It's like alcohol on steroids. Small doses might seem to get you going. You will likely feel relaxed and maybe a bit more social. But increase the dose a tiny bit, and you could find yourself sliding into dangerous territory like dizziness, hallucinations, and even blackouts. And no, those blackouts are not the fun kind where you just lose track of time. They can get pretty serious, involving seizures or worse. As if things aren't scary enough as is, overdoses involving GHB are pretty common, especially when mixed with other substances. Signs of an overdose include vomiting, irregular breathing, confusion, hallucinations, seizures, and even death. Amphetamines. Back in the 60s, drugs were the in thing as far as Hollywood was concerned, and it wasn't just the actors who were in on it. Legendary director and producer David O. Selznick was apparently a big fan of amphetamine back in the day. He allegedly relied on the drug to get him through the long hours of making movies like Gone with the Wind, which, by the way, is a classic. Actor Evelyn Keyes, who was on set, remembers him crushing up a Benzedrine and licking the pieces from his palm, a grain at a time to keep going. Meanwhile, director Carol Reed and much of his crew reportedly relied on heavy doses of amphetamines to keep up with the fast-paced production of The Third Man. Amphetamines are powerful stimulants that can push your brain and body into high gear. Think of them as the 5G network for your nervous system. In medical settings, amphetamines are prescribed to help people with ADHD maintain focus. But much like with DXM, things can get out of hand when it's taken without a prescription or in high doses. At first, you might feel like you've unlocked a secret energy source. Suddenly, you're more alert, confident, and ready to tackle anything. But don't get too comfortable because that's just the beginning. When amphetamines enter your system, they increase the release of dopamine, norepinephrine, and to some extent, serotonin. These brain chemicals are tied to pleasure, focus, and alertness, creating that initial energized and euphoric feeling. However, when too much floods your brain, your heart races, your blood pressure races, and your thoughts start spinning. One user described it like this: "At first, I felt on top of the world, like nothing could stop me. But soon, I was so jittery, I couldn't think straight. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought I'd pass out." People take amphetamines in various ways: popping pills, snorting powder, or in extreme cases, smoking it or injecting it. The quicker it hits, the faster the crash afterwards. While experiencing the high, some users forget to eat or sleep, and as soon as the effects wear off, they're left feeling exhausted with headaches and sometimes intense paranoia. The come down from amphetamine use can be brutal, lasting for days and making you feel mentally drained and emotionally unstable. One user said, "The high was fun for a few hours, but the crash felt like I'd been hit by a truck. I couldn't get out of bed for weeks." Regular amphetamine use has even more serious consequences. Over time, your body begins to rely on the drug just to function, leading to tolerance and dependency. Long-term use is known to cause anxiety, depression, and physical health issues, including health problems. Chronic misuse can also damage teeth and gums, especially with methamphetamine, a more potent form of the drug. This condition, known as meth mouth, can result from dehydration and neglecting basic self-care. Dangerously high doses of amphetamine can cause hypothermia, seizures, or heart attacks, and in severe cases, they can be fatal. Khat, Catha edulis. If you've ever found yourself in a gathering where people seem unnaturally happy and leaves are being passed around for them to chew, congratulations, you just found yourself the perfect vegetarian community. Or maybe not. You just might be in the midst of people taking Khat. Khat comes from the Catha edulis plant, naturally grown in the highlands of Yemen and parts of East Africa. For centuries, its young leaves and buds have been chewed for their stimulating effects, creating a sense of euphoria. To put it simply, Khat turns you into the life of the party, even if you're the kind of introvert who'd rather hide in the corner at social gatherings. The main chemicals in Khat are cathinone, a compound similar to amphetamines but a little easier on the brain, and cathine. Both chemicals team up to give you a boost of energy that could probably outlast an 80s rock star on their best day. After chewing Khat, you'll notice the effects kick in within an hour, and it'll last about 3.5 hours. Initially, you might feel excited and chatty, but as it wears off, you could find yourself sliding into tiredness and discomfort. Kind of like that late-night coffee that turns your energy into anxiety. When the high fades, prepare for a come-down that can leave you feeling low and drained the next day. While you might start out thinking Khat is just a social enhancer, over time, you could get addicted. No, seriously. If you use Khat regularly, you might develop mental issues like anxiety and even psychosis, much like what can happen with stronger stimulants like cocaine and amphetamines. Khat might seem like a harmless way to liven up that high school reunion after party, but remember, the experience varies with each user, and it comes with its own set of risks. Ketamine. If you're a fan of basketball, then Lamar Odom needs no introduction. If you aren't, then you probably know him as that one guy who married Khloe Kardashian after a month of dating. Either way, you've probably heard of the guy. Odom has had his fair share of drug-related complications, and so when he talks about addiction, a lot of people listen. That's why he opened up about using drugs like ketamine as a way to help him deal with depression and anxiety, and manage his addiction. It was pretty minding. I don't know. That sounds like an awful lot like fighting fire with fire. Kit Kat, or ketamine, was originally developed as a surgical anesthetic to be used in medical settings. But, like almost every other drug on this list, certain people have begun to use it for recreational purposes, in ways that may or may not be life-threatening. Also called Special K in some quarters, ketamine has become the go-to party drug for people wanting a fast escape from reality. But don't be deceived, this is no harmless joyride. Although ketamine is classified as a Schedule III drug, meaning it has medical uses, it's still pretty dangerous. Using ketamine recreationally can send your brain into a loop, like a skipping record on your grandma's old stereo, with the added bonus of making you feel like you're floating out of your own body. Frequent users have described it as a strange, dreamlike state, where everything feels totally different. The high doesn't last long, about 30 minutes to an hour, but it can feel like you've been out for much longer. Some describe it as a short visit to the Grim Reaper, a near-death experience if you will. If, for some reason, the prospect of paying a short visit to the Grim Reaper has you excited, you might want to think twice about it. Ketamine messes with how you see and hear things, leaving you disconnected from reality and yourself. Ketamine is usually snorted, injected, and in some cases slipped into drinks, which is when it becomes especially dangerous. Watch your drink buddies. Because it's relatively tasteless and odorless, ketamine has been used in cases of date mistreatment, leaving victims completely unaware of their surroundings. Regular use can cause memory loss, severe health problems, and in some cases, death. There have also been reports of long-term physiological damages like bladder issues and cognitive problems. Tier 3. Salvia. Perhaps the most shocking thing about this drug is that it has been known to make users feel like animals and, in some cases, inanimate objects. The magic of salvia lies in its active ingredient, salvinorin A, which is one of the most powerful naturally occurring psychoactive compounds. One puff can unleash a wild array of sensations and leave you questioning what's real and what isn't. Of course, that's not all. Salvia is known to increase anxiety levels for some, but others report that it makes everything around them seem funny and throws their senses into a quick rush of colors and sounds. People use salvia by directly chewing on the leaves, smoking the plant's extracts, brewing it into an herbal tea, or by dropping a concentrated mixture under the tongue to get the drug in the bloodstream. People who are in a hurry to experience that high usually opt for smoking, because that way, it takes only a few seconds for it to kick in, and it lasts anywhere between 15 to 90 minutes. After the high fades, the user may experience feelings of instability. One netizen described salvia saying, "It can be a beautiful experience, just make sure you have friends holding you down while you scream." Yeah, that doesn't sound very reassuring. Although no deaths have been reported from salvia use, it can lead to impaired judgment and risky behavior due to its mind-altering effects. Plus, its effects on the brain are unpredictable, which is kind of scary. In 2010, a video of Miley Cyrus smoking an unidentified substance made its way to the internet. At first, people assumed she was smoking marijuana, but some genius on her team decided it would be a great idea to clear the air. Miley's camp put out a statement explaining that she was indeed smoking a psychedelic herb, but it was salvia and not marijuana. At the time, using salvia was legal in California, and Miley's people made sure to stress on that. Synthetic cannabinoids. We will start this one with a real-life horror story. Sometime in July 2016, about 33 people collapsed on a street in Brooklyn. They lay on the ground, vomiting down their shirts, twitching, and blank-faced. Some members of the group made some jerking movements with their arms as their eyes rolled back. Others groaned and clutched onto fire hydrants to try to stay upright. Witnesses said the scene was like something out of the Walking Dead franchise. The media jumped on the story and began writing headlines about people turning into zombies. As crazy as that sounds, it's actually not far from the truth. Apparently, the 33 people had all smoked a type of synthetic cannabinoid called AK-47 24-karat gold. So, you know all about cannabis. Now, let's take a look at her distant cousin. Actually, scratch that. Synthetic cannabinoids are as unpredictable as they come, and they are often falsely branded as synthetic cannabis. Yeah, they're not related at all. These chemical-laden packets with flashy names like Spice, K2, or Chronic promise a weed-like high, but delivers far more chaos than calm. While they're marketed as alternatives to marijuana, the truth is, instead of a mellow relaxation, these drugs can lead you down a rabbit hole of bizarre and dangerous experiences. Picture this. You're at a party and someone hands you a bright, eye-catching pouch, saying it's just like smoking weed, only better. You light it up, expecting a familiar buzz. But within minutes, things take a wild turn. Your mind starts racing in multiple directions, overwhelming you with anxiety and hallucinations. As your mind continues spinning out of control, it becomes clear that what you are dealing with isn't weed with a twist. It's something much more dangerous. People typically smoke synthetic cannabinoids, but some daring individuals prefer to mix them with herbs or brew it into tea. Dealers often slap the label herbal incense to make it sound fancy, but that's not the case. The effects of synthetic cannabinoids can range from heart palpitations and paranoia to extreme psychotic episodes. You might experience chest pain, uncontrollable aggression, or worse, a trip to the hospital with symptoms straight out of a nightmare. If you think the dangers disappear after the high wears off, think again. Long-term use can leave lasting mental health problems that don't fade away so easily. Synthetic cannabinoids are a dangerous gamble. Each batch is different, with manufacturers constantly tweaking the chemicals, making the risk level impossible to predict. It's like playing Russian roulette with your brain and body. So the next time you're tempted by a shiny packet of faux weed, remember, the high might not be worth the dangerous crash that follows. Barbiturates. In 1969, Judy Garland was found dead, and toxicology reports showed that she had died from a drug overdose. So where exactly did it go wrong for the Hollywood star? In one interview, Garland told biographer Richard A. Lurtzman that her struggle with addiction began on set. She told him that studio executives would use drugs to squeeze as much work out of her as possible. Speaking on the issue, she said, "They had us, Judy and Mickey Rooney, working days and nights on end. They'd give us pills to keep us on our feet long after we were exhausted. Then they'd take us on the studio hospital and knock us out with sleeping pills. Then after 4 hours, they'd wake us up and give us the pep pills again so we could work 72 hours in a row." As you would expect, the continuous substance use caused Garland to develop a serious addiction to these prescription meds. It was this addiction that pushed her to overdose on barbiturates at the age of 47. Barbiturates belong to the class of drugs known as sedative hypnotics. They emerged in the early 1900s, but had to be dropped soon enough because of their dangerous side effects. Barbiturates can provide relief for stress and sleepiness, but they come with a catch. The line between a chill night and a trip to the hospital is as thin as a strand of spaghetti. Just a pinch too much can send you into a coma, or in the worst case scenario, straight to the great beyond. This dangerous fine line was the reason the medical world decided to drop barbiturates in favor of their tamer cousins, benzodiazepines. Yet, despite this shift, barbiturates are making a comeback, particularly among teens who may not have learned the cautionary tales of the past. Like I said, it's a very slippery slope. Take a little dose and you will feel drowsy and carefree. Add a little more and you might find yourself stumbling around like a tipsy giraffe, slurring your words so bad that you can't clearly hear yourself. Turn things up a notch and you could be lost to the world, unconscious and dangerously on the edge of death. This shaky balance is what the science people call a narrow therapeutic index. It basically means that the difference between a good time and a fatal error is alarmingly slim. And just in case you think all you have to do is perfect your dosage, you also have to deal with withdrawal symptoms. Things like tremors and sleepless nights may become your new reality. In severe cases, it can lead to hallucinations, fever, and seizures. And for those bringing new life into the world, if barbiturates get thrown into the mix, the baby could get addicted and experience withdrawal symptoms at birth. Oxycodone. If you've ever wondered about the existence of a pill that can ease pain by making you feel numb, it exists, and it's called oxycodone. On the streets, oxycodone is known by brand names like OxyContin and Percocet. It's a prescription painkiller that helps with just about any type of pain. So why is it on this list? One word: addiction. What starts as a prescribed dose to help ease pain can quickly spiral into something dangerous as your body builds tolerance, demanding higher amounts just to feel the same effects. According to the United States Department of Justice, more than 13 million Americans abuse oxycodone, including some children as young as 12 years old. Immediate release takes effect in about 10 to 30 minutes, while controlled release formulations take about an hour to kick in. The plasma half-life is 3 to 5 hours, and stable plasma levels are reached within 24 to 36 hours. The duration ranges from 3 to 6 hours for immediate release or 12 hours for controlled release formulations. With oxycodone, addiction is more than a risk. It's pretty common, and it can lead you dangerously close to a deadly overdose. People who abuse oxycodone tend to chew, inject, or snort it. They would do just about anything but to take it the right way. They do this hoping to experience a euphoric high that's somewhat similar to a heroin high. But like heroin use, there's a dark side to it. Slurred speech, confusion, trouble breathing, and a bluish tint to the lips are common pointers of oxycodone abuse. In extreme cases, an overdose can lead to seizures or unconsciousness. Once addicted, it is pretty difficult to quit. Withdrawal hits hard, with symptoms like nausea, vomiting, muscle pain, severe anxiety, and depression. A beautiful story of a pain reliever eventually ends up causing even more pain. On its own, oxycodone might not seem all that scary, but things can easily get ugly with this one. Take, for example, the case of Heath Ledger, the award-winning actor who played Joker in the film Dark Knight. In 2007, Heath was going through a really rough patch in his life, following his split from his partner, Michelle Williams. He felt like he had hit rock bottom, and so he turned to drugs like Oxycodone to cope with his unstable mental health and insomnia. But that didn't go well at all. In January 2008, he was found dead in what was reported as an accidental overdose. Phencyclidine. On June 18, 2013, the body of Odin Lloyd, a semi-pro football player, was found in an industrial park near Aaron Hernandez's home. At the time, Hernandez was a New England Patriots player, but that changed pretty quickly. He was arrested on June 26th, and just 90 minutes after he was taken into custody, the Patriots cut him loose. Hernandez pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder, but by August 2013, a grand jury had indicted him. Fast forward about 20 months and he was found guilty of first-degree murder, along with 5 weapons charges, landing him a life sentence with no parole. During the investigation, it came out that Hernandez was a regular PCP user, which left him so paranoid he carried guns everywhere he went. To put it simply, PCP is a mind-bending substance that dances on the edge of reality and illusion. Often sold as white powder, this illicit street drug comes alive when mixed with alcohol or water. Some people sell it in its liquid form, but that's not very common. With a bag full of street names like Angel Dust, Embalming Fluid, and Supergrass, you know you're in for an unpredictable ride when you decide to give PCP a try. You can choose either to snort it, shoot it up, smoke it, or even swallow it. The choice is all yours, although you're better off running from it. Once in the system, PCP acts like a trickster, altering your brain's chemistry and reshaping your perception. This hallucinogenic dissociative drug can make you feel like you're floating, disconnected from reality, or even superhuman. It takes just minutes to get you up and running on a euphoric adventure where reality fades away. You feel invincible, as if nothing can touch you. But beware, the higher you go, the harder you fall. The come down from PCP is quite ugly. Small doses may numb your body and impair your vision, but large doses, that's when paranoia and baseless suspicion kick in, possibly leading you to hear whispers of non-existent voices. You may also exhibit bizarre or even violent behavior. PCP doesn't play nice. It can spike your heart rate, blood pressure, and body temperature, while also masking pain from serious injuries due to its analgesic properties. Long-term use can cause memory loss, cognitive difficulties, and mood disorders, with some users even facing thoughts of self-harm. PCP can easily trap your mind, creating a cycle of dependence that only gets tougher to break. As tolerance builds, you might feel the urge to take more to recapture that first high. And if you try to stop, withdrawal symptoms like anxiety, agitation, and even depression can kick in. It's a tough situation to escape from. Fentanyl. It's time to bring out the big guns. Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid that is about 100 times stronger than morphine. It's so potent that a single dose can completely knock you out. You should also know that measuring fentanyl doses can be quite tricky. Once recognized as a medical miracle, fentanyl is now laced into street drugs, causing overdoses and deaths at alarming rates. If you were searching for it on the street, you'd likely hear it go by nicknames like Apache, China Girl, Dance Fever, Friend, or Goodfella. Fentanyl is a potent synthetic opioid approved by the FDA for pain relief and as an anesthesia. It is typically used to treat severe pain, especially after surgery or in patients with chronic pain. While fentanyl has legitimate medical uses, it has now become a leading cause of overdose deaths in the United States. According to the CDC, synthetic opioids like fentanyl are the primary driver of overdose deaths in the United States. Street-made fentanyl is flooding the streets, and it's often mixed with other drugs to increase potency. Because one deadly substance isn't bad enough already. In the streets, fentanyl is sold as a powder, nasal sprays, or counterfeit pills that look like prescription medications. These counterfeit pills can contain lethal doses, which can be pretty dangerous because, well, it's deadly. People use fentanyl in various ways: snorting, smoking, taking it orally as pills, or even absorbing it through the skin. The method of consumption can affect how quickly it enters the bloodstream and the intensity of the high. Fentanyl can produce feelings of euphoria and pain relief, which is why it can be so appealing. However, this comes with serious side effects. Many users report feeling drowsy or confused, experiencing nausea, and sometimes even a loss of appetite. Overdosing on fentanyl can lead to stupor, pinpoint pupils, clammy skin, and respiratory failure, which can be fatal. Giving up fentanyl can be incredibly tough. Withdrawal symptoms usually kick in within 12 hours after the last dose and can last about a week. In this time, users may experience goosebumps, chills, irritability, insomnia, nausea, and pain in muscles and bones. So much for a pain reliever. One user shared their experience saying, "The withdrawal felt like a nightmare. I was sweating and shaking, just wanting to feel normal again." This good fella doesn't look so good now, does it? Tier 4. Methadone. Methadone started out as a prescription drug for treating severe pain, but it soon became much more. When scientists discovered that methadone was a long-acting opioid agonist that could block the brain from feeling the euphoric high of opioids, reduce withdrawal symptoms, and manage drug cravings, they jumped on the chance to use it in addiction treatment. In no time, it was being used to help people battling with addiction to opioid drugs like heroin. That sounds pretty cool, so why is methadone on this list? Well, because things can easily go south. When methadone is not taken in line with the prescription and under the watchful eyes of a healthcare practitioner, it can be even uglier and more addictive than the hard drugs you're trying to break free from. Addiction, of course, comes with the risk of an overdose. A methadone overdose is like a dark wave crashing down, and its symptoms can be quite sneaky. It starts with a bit of drowsiness, which isn't so bad, but before you know it, you'll be dealing with shallow breathing and pinpoint pupils. Let's say you come to your senses at this point and decide to quit. It won't be easy. You may experience withdrawal symptoms ranging from muscle aches, vomiting, and cramps to severe nausea, depression, and diarrhea. If you decide to go on using methadone, you still wouldn't be safe from harm because you would have to deal with the side effects. Things like difficulty breathing, chest pain, and a whole bunch of other unpleasant stuff. Mescaline. If you ever find yourself wandering through a lonely desert, it's not just the dangerous animals you need to be wary of. Some plants can be just as dangerous, especially if you're in Mexico. Okay, so I may have exaggerated that one a little bit, but seriously, you would need to keep an eye for plants containing mescaline. Mescaline is a naturally occurring hallucinogen primarily found in certain cacti species that mostly thrive in arid, desert-like regions. Chemically, it's classified as a phenethylamine, which means it shares a similar structure with stimulants like amphetamine. However, what sets mescaline apart is its potent psychedelic properties. Peyote buttons, the part of the plant that contains mescaline, are often chewed or soaked in water to create a bitter, hallucinogenic tea. Some people prefer to grind the buttons into a powder and pop it in capsule form. Whether you decide to sip, swallow, or chew, the bitterness of mescaline cannot be avoided, literally and metaphorically. Unlike most psychedelic drugs, mescaline takes quite a long time to get moving in your system. After ingestion, it typically takes about 60 minutes for mescaline to begin its journey through the mind, though the onset may vary depending on how it's consumed. Once it hits, buckle up. This experience lasts anywhere from 8 to 12 hours. It's not a ride that lets you get off early. Whether your eyes are opened or closed, mescaline will conjure up vivid visuals, from flowing geometric patterns to surreal landscapes. Synesthesia, a neurological condition where sounds may take on colors or visuals carry tastes, isn't out of the question either. But just as mescaline can open doors to dazzling visions, it can also lead you down darker hallways. When taken in high doses, mescaline's effects can become overwhelming. Paranoia, anxiety, frightening hallucinations, and panic attacks may take hold. Physical symptoms like nausea, vomiting, and dizziness may also surface even as your mind spirals. If you're wondering just how bad things can get with mescaline, the answer is pretty simple. Bad enough to land you in the hospital. Or at least that's what happened to the 3 young men from Chichester, England, who decided to give the hallucinogenic drug a shot. They wound up hospitalized, and the oldest among them was arrested on suspicion of possession and supply of a Class A drug, ayahuasca. This one is quite interesting. Ayahuasca is a brew that is said to be just as much about spirit as it is about the substance. It's mostly used as a part of a sacred ritual in some parts of South America. The ayahuasca potion, sometimes called ayahuasca tea, is made by mixing the leaves of the Psychotria viridis shrub with the stalks of the Banisteriopsis caapi vine. Traditionally, ayahuasca is consumed in a ceremonial setting, often under the watchful eye of an experienced shaman. These shamans prepare the brew and guide participants through their journeys, making sure they don't get lost in the mazy landscape of their own minds. Before diving into this ritual, participants are made to follow a strict diet, cutting out things like caffeine, alcohol, and even sex to purify the body. To find out whether there's a spirit behind the potency of ayahuasca, you would have to take a trip to Peru. But here's what we know. Psychotria viridis leaves contain N-dimethyltryptamine, aka DMT, a powerful hallucinogen that must be broken down in the body before it can take effect. That's where the Banisteriopsis copyvine comes in. It's packed with MAO inhibitors that allow DMT to reach your brain. Together, these two make a potent psychedelic brew that is both mind-bending and intense. Now, before you grab your plane ticket to Peru, you might want to hear this. The effects kick in within 20 to 60 minutes and can last anywhere from 2 to 6 hours. When the ayahuasca kicks in, you may find yourself on a psychedelic roller coaster that offers a bit of euphoria, quickly followed by intense emotions like fear. The euphoric experience is often short-lived, and what comes next is a sucker punch of paranoia that can make you question your very existence. Some participants report being knee-deep in discomfort, experiencing nausea, vomiting, and yes, that infamous purging of both body and spirit. The bottom line? Ayahuasca comes with risks that are arguably more dangerous than its benefits, especially when used unsupervised. Flakka, alpha PvP. If zombie apocalypse ever happens, this drug would probably have something to do with it. In recent times, Flakka users have been spotted acting pretty much like zombies, staggering around slowly, then suddenly breaking into bursts of strange and sometimes aggressive behavior. In 2016, a student in Florida tried to harm a married couple and then tried to eat the husband's face while he was high on, you guessed it, Flakka. Or at least that's what some sources say. In another instance, an unidentified man who believed himself to be the mythical god Thor got naked and attempted to get it on with a tree. With that in mind, it's easy to see why Flakka goes by the nickname zombie drug. It's not only dangerous for the user, but for everyone they may come in contact with. Now, let's talk science. Known in the lab as alpha-pyrrolidinopenthiophenone, or alpha PvP, Flakka is a synthetic cathinone. Basically a lab-made version of natural cathinones, but with effects that are way more intense. Typically, Flakka comes in crystal form and often gets lumped in with other synthetic drugs in the bath salts. We'll get to that in a minute. Mostly produced in underground labs in China and India, Flakka is banned in the US and plenty of other countries, with good reason. Flakka inhibits the reuptake of dopamine and norepinephrine in the brain, increasing their already dangerous effects to even higher levels. Users typically snort or smoke the crystals, leading to rapid, intense highs. Some users say it hits like a freight train and only takes a few minutes to kick in. In the early stage, Flakka might feel like a party drug, inducing euphoria and a surge of energy, but this quickly turns into paranoia and hallucinations. One user shared their experience saying, "You feel like you can run for miles, but then suddenly the world starts melting around you." This description actually checks out because there have been some wild images captured of Flakka users sprinting through the streets in nothing but their birthday suits, attacking others, or having full-on conversations with invisible friends. Away from all the volatile behavior, using Flakka can have some really severe effects, including dangerously high body temperatures and muscle breakdown, which can lead to kidney failure. Long-term use can lead to heart problems, lasting psychosis, cognitive deficits, and even renal failure. Neurological damage can be hard to reverse, leaving many users with ongoing mental health challenges and PTSD from extreme hallucinations. Synthetic cathinones, bath salts. When cocaine, MDMA, and the like started facing heavy legal restrictions, crackhead scientists went into the lab to synthesize more stimulants that could evade those restrictions, and that's how bath salts came to be. Contrary to what the name implies, bath salts are not a hygiene product used for bathing. They are instead dangerous synthetic cathinones. Unlike Epsom salts, Dead Sea salts, or other types of salts you might use to spice up your bath time, synthetic cathinones, the laboratory name for bath salts, are powerful and, of course, illegal. They are usually made in poorly equipped and unethical laboratories that somehow manage to tweak the chemicals just enough to avoid restrictions. The most common active ingredient in bath salts is methyl N-deoxypyrovalerone, aka MDPV. MDPV belongs to the phenethylamine class and is structurally similar to cathinone. Although MDPV is the most common, there may be other synthetic cathinones in the mix. Bath salt users tend to get really creative when it comes to how they use the drug. Most prefer to snort it, but some have taken things to a whole new level by injecting, smoking, swallowing, and even You guessed it, rectally inserting the drug. Snorting or injecting bath salts delivers the most immediate and intense effects, sometimes kicking in within minutes. Just after taking it, users will experience a burst of energy and euphoria, with some describing the sensation as feeling invincible or having enough energy to run the London City Marathon in 30 minutes. In extreme cases, the drug induces excited delirium, marked by violent behavior, hypothermia, and intense hallucinations. One user shared their experience with bath salt-induced paranoia, saying, "I was convinced people were following me. The walls were closing in, and I was seeing things that weren't there." The come down from using synthetic Cathinones is far from pleasant. Users frequently report deep depression, anxiety, and insomnia during the crash. The long-term effects are just as dangerous, with users facing an increased risk of heart failure, lasting psychosis, and permanent cognitive deficits. Synthetic Cathinones may appear harmless, but don't let that fool you. Their effects are anything but. Krokodil. If you've ever wondered what a cocktail of codeine, iodine, gasoline, and red phosphorus, aka the stuff from matchboxes, might be good for, your first guess probably wouldn't be a recreational drug. And that's why you would be wrong. Krokodil is made by combining all the earlier mentioned substances to create a drug that contains the active analgesic substance desomorphine. Desomorphine is similar to morphine, but it is way stronger and kicks in a lot quicker. If there's one thing you should have figured out about recreational drugs by now, it's that in most cases, the cheaper the drug, the more destruction it leaves in its wake. Designed to be a cheap heroin substitute, Krokodil packs a solid punch, and I don't mean that in a good way. Just like heroin, Krokodil is typically taken intravenously, and as a result, the effects kick in almost immediately. But where heroin provides a lasting high, Krokodil fades out fast. Users feel the euphoria peak within minutes, and once it's gone, the need to avoid withdrawal symptoms brings them back to the needle, creating a vicious cycle. The high from Krokodil numbs pain and dulls the senses, creating an effect similar to that of a powerful sedative. Users often report feeling warm and almost hypnotized, but this calm is short-lived, and the downsides can be brutal. Users often experience heavy drowsiness, nausea, intense itching, and, in severe cases, rapid skin decay around injection sites. In such cases, the skin may become scaly or develop a greenish color, and that's where the drug gets its name. Krokodil translates to crocodile, so that's actually quite dark. The withdrawal symptoms from Krokodil are nothing short of nightmarish. They hit fast and hard, sometimes just hours after the last dose, and include everything from intense anxiety and insomnia to nausea, tremors, muscle pain, and even seizures. They're so severe that users often end up in the ER just to survive the process. And you thought caffeine withdrawal was bad. Krokodil's toxic recipe doesn't just devastate the body externally, it also damages the brain, liver, and kidneys, leading to organ failure. It attacks users from the inside out, making recovery difficult and sometimes impossible. Mentally, Krokodil creates a fog that affects memory, motor skills, and speech long after the high is gone. Tier 5. Quaaludes. Does the number 714 ring a bell? If it doesn't, good for you. You most likely didn't witness the Methadone wave in the 80s. If you recognize the number, then I'm sure it was imprinted on Quaalude tablets back in the day. Quaaludes, formerly known as methaquolone, are synthetic barbiturate-like central nervous system depressants from the quinazolinone family. Methaquolone is synthesized to deliver sedative and hypnotic effects. Quaaludes were initially developed as a safer alternative to barbiturates, but things didn't go as planned. At first, Quaaludes functioned perfectly as a sleep aid, but it didn't take long for people to figure out it had potential, so to speak. Between the 1960s and 1980s, Quaaludes became the it girl of the party drug scene. Soon, the drug's potential for addiction and misuse led it to being banned in the US. This, in turn, made its production largely illegal in most countries. Back in the day, Quaaludes were taken in pill form, but in some cases, they were crushed and inhaled or injected for quicker, more intense effects. After ingestion, the drug would begin to take effect in roughly 30 to 60 minutes, with peak impact occurring between 2 to 4 hours after consumption. Quaaludes have a half-life of 20 to 60 hours, and with such a lengthy half-life, it's no surprise that it came to be known as the daytime high drug. The high from using Quaaludes brings on extreme relaxation and euphoria, almost like a warm wave of calm that can lull users to sleep. When resisting drowsiness, users often felt a unique euphoria that provided a false sense of invincibility, a feeling that led to many instances of poor decision-making. At higher doses, Quaaludes lead to confusion and severe loss of coordination. The body's natural responses became so dulled that breathing slows to almost fatal levels. Users may find themselves unable to stand or even hold on to basic motor skills like waving or walking. A dose that's too high can trigger coma or even death. There are lots of reasons you might want to go back to the 80s, but this drug shouldn't be one. In 2005, major tabloids broke the shocking news of sexual assault allegations against America's dad, Bill Cosby. No, seriously, that's what the guy was called. Andrea Constant, a former employee at Cosby's University, accused him of drugging and mistreating her earlier that year. Although prosecutors initially refused to press charges, Constant was determined to fight for herself. She filed a civil suit, joined by 12 other women with similar claims. The case was settled out of court for an undisclosed sum, but that was far from the end. Otherwise, I wouldn't be telling you the story. Fast forward to 2014 when Cosby was planning a TV comeback, but the universe had other plans for him. 50 women came forward with mistreatment allegations, and Constant was among them. Cosby's lawyers tried to dismiss the stories, and he himself claimed he didn't have to answer to innuendos. But this time, the accusations just wouldn't go away, no matter how hard he and his legal team tried. Cosby was taken to court, and it was during court proceedings that he made some shocking revelations. A 2005 document showed that Cosby had admitted to using Quaaludes to sedate women, although he maintained that the encounters were consensual. Some sources even say he confessed to using the drugs on teenagers. During the trial, Constant testified that Cosby had given her pills, calling them herbal and claiming that they would take the edge off. Instead, the pills left her paralyzed. Tianeptine. Ever been approached at a gas station by a sketchy middle-aged guy trying to sell you a pack of pills for $10? Sure you have. $10 says he was trying to sell you Tianeptine. Dealers who sell this drug have been known to lurk around the quieter gas stations, popping up behind unsuspecting folks with the promises of a mystery pill they swear will help relieve pain and depression. Tianeptine, nicknamed gas station heroin, is not your typical tricyclic antidepressant. There is actually a lot more to it than the guy at the gas station is letting on. Unlike typical antidepressants, this drug produces effects akin to those of opioids when taken in extremely high doses. And while this may sound like fun, it also means that things can start to get pretty ugly very quickly. Tianeptine was initially created as a prescription medication in regulated labs abroad, and was originally designed to have an antidepressant effect through its influence on glutamate and neuroplasticity. It was prescribed in controlled low-dose tablets for managing specific psychiatric conditions. However, things didn't exactly go as planned. The Tianeptine you'll find in US gas stations and online usually comes in capsule form, with unverified doses and inconsistent potency levels, so you really can't predict just how high you might end up. When consumed, Tianeptine takes about 30 minutes to an hour to kick in. It starts out with a desired euphoric high, but things take a dark turn as the dose increases, but also depending on the user's tolerance level of the drug. Users may experience drowsiness, dizziness, dry mouth, and constipation. Add a little more, and you start to experience blurred vision and lucid dreams. To make matters worse, these symptoms don't just go away immediately. In extreme cases, users have reported experiencing respiratory depression, seizures, and even cardiac arrest. Anxiety and panic attacks have also been reported among users who overdosed on this drug. In summary, this is one psychiatric drug that can pretty much turn you into a psychiatric patient when used for recreational purposes and without the supervision of a medical professional. Buprenorphine. This one sounds like a scene straight out of a crime thriller. Picture a detective going undercover to infiltrate a drug cartel. But instead of bringing down the bad guys, he gets tangled up and ends up as a double agent. That's a bit like the story of buprenorphine, the addiction treatment drug that can sometimes end up as part of the problem it was supposed to fix. Buprenorphine, a synthetic opioid, is made from thebaine, an alkaloid derived from the poppy plant, and it's designed to fight opioid addiction and ease chronic pain. Unlike full agonists, buprenorphine offers some opioid effects without the full-blown euphoria, making it a safer alternative, or so it seems. For the most part, buprenorphine functions as a partial agonist. When it binds to the opioid receptors, it doesn't cause the high that other opioids do. It provides just enough to trick your brain into thinking it's satisfied. However, just like vaccines, the key to using buprenorphine to treat opioid use disorders is finding the perfect dose for each patient. Things begin to get ugly when users take even a little more than required. In extremely high doses or when mixed with other substances, buprenorphine can cause respiratory distress, meaning it slows down your breathing to dangerous levels. There's also the risk of an overdose. Overdosing on this drug can lead to serious, life-threatening situations if not managed properly. Also, like with every other drug that affects the nervous system, buprenorphine use comes with withdrawals. The withdrawal symptoms that accompany buprenorphine include feelings of anxiousness, restlessness, and trouble sleeping. Some users experience symptoms like sweating, nausea, and irritability. Using buprenorphine long-term, especially without appropriate medical supervision, isn't without its consequences. Sure, it can help keep withdrawals at bay, but over time, your body might start depending on it just to feel normal. And let's not forget the rare but real risk of adrenal insufficiency, when your body just doesn't make enough stress hormones, leaving you feeling fatigued and weak. Xylazine. In the treasure hunt for the next big high, there seems to be no limit to what people are willing to try. They've explored mushrooms, cacti, khat, and even synthesized their own research chemicals. What's next, you ask? Xylazine, an animal sedative. Xylazine is a veterinary medicine that acts as a tranquilizer, sedative, and pain reliever for animals. Chemically, it's similar to clonidine, a medication for high blood pressure. Xylazine primarily works by targeting the brain's alpha-2 adrenergic receptors, slowing down the release of neurotransmitters like norepinephrine. Its chemical structure is cleverly crafted to mimic certain naturally occurring neurotransmitters, which is why it effectively sedates animals. Notice how it's strictly made for animals? Yeah, there's a whole group of people who either didn't notice or simply don't care because they use it anyway. Okay, to be fair, a good number of people who use Xylazine didn't actually set out to do so. They just can't tell when it's been introduced into their system because it's usually mixed in with some other popular opioids sold by street vendors. Some sources claim that Xylazine gives a feeling of euphoria similar to what you might get from using opioids, but the jury is still out on this. Whichever the case, make no mistake, Xylazine is not an opioid. It's a tranquilizer that can throw your body into a deep state of sedation. The worst part is, if you do get into trouble with this one, opioid antidotes like naloxone won't be helpful at all. Xylazine's effects are far from euphoric. Users often feel drowsy, disoriented, and sedated. Some people report feeling heavy and disconnected, almost as if they were trapped in a fog. In extremely bad cases, Xylazine can bring on serious respiratory depression, where your breathing slows down to the point of stopping. Your skin may become cold and hypothermia can set in. Necrotic skin ulcers can appear, not just at the injection site, but across the body, leaving deep, decaying wounds. Severe cases can lead to coma or death, especially when combined with other substances like opioids. There's no antidote for Xylazine overdose, making it all the more terrifying. U-47-700. Pink. If you've been keeping an eye on the news about drug use, you've probably heard of pink. This drug has a rep for being deadly. It's so dangerous that any mention of it being used for recreational purposes almost always involves a tragic headline. After being developed in the late 1970s as a potential alternative to morphine, this drug was quickly abandoned by medical practitioners and is not approved for use in any country in the world. Today, it circulates as a designer drug, often sold online and in various forms, including powders and counterfeit pills that sometimes resemble legitimate prescription opioids. A lot of people who use pink don't take it solo. They tend to mix it with other drugs, which, ironically, actually makes it all the more dangerous. On the streets, these mixtures have really cool names. Take, for instance, New York Post. A mixture of Valoryl fentanyl and U-47-700, and Beats by Dre, Unstoppable. A mixture of heroin, Furanil fentanyl, Valoryl fentanyl, and U-47-700. Pink is purely synthetic. It is crafted in shady labs using a blend of chemicals. The chemical structure, officially called 3,4-dichloro-N2-dimethylamino-cyclohexyl N-methylbenzamide, shows structural similarities to other opioids but brings a unique risk profile. When taken, U-47-700 has effects similar to other opioids, bringing on sedation, intense euphoria, and pain relief. But with those effects come serious risks. This drug can cause severe respiratory depression that may be fatal even in small doses. Reported side effects range from the typical stuff like constipation and pinpoint pupils to more severe complications like a dangerous fluid buildup in the lungs that's often seen in overdose cases. The potency and variability of pink have led to dozens of reported overdose deaths between 2015 and 2016 alone. The DEA documented at least 46 fatalities linked to U-47-700. Users of pink face risks similar to those of better-known opioids like heroin, but with a dangerous twist. Its potency and potential contaminants make it wildly unpredictable. As with synthetic drugs like spice and bath salts, this stuff can wreak havoc on the respiratory and central nervous systems, which is why it's earned such a deadly reputation. The irony? No one really wants to buy it on purpose, but that's where things get tricky. Some straight scientists mix it into other drugs they sell, thinking they're just spicing things up a bit, when really they're making it even more dangerous. Some dealers even sell pink to unsuspecting users by making them believe they are purchasing a prescription opioid. That's all the crazy drugs we have for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe.